A law was made a distant moon ago here. July and August cannot be too hot, and there's a legal limit to the snow here in Camelot.
Do you remember like how you got to camp? You were pretty little, but do you remember how you got to camp and maybe some first memories of camp?
I do, actually. I remember it very well. I remember my mom telling me that she had signed me up for camp, and I had no idea what that meant. And I said, okay. I went, and I think within a week, this was going into second grade. So I think I was still pretty shy at that point, or at least I wasn't as outgoing as maybe I became. And within about a week of being at camp, all of a sudden I learned that I had been cast as one of the leads in the Cookie Lady. And
Yeah.
I didn't know what that meant. All I knew is that I suddenly had to memorize a whole bunch of stuff, and I didn't have the slightest idea what I was doing. But I remember that that you would actually come and pull me out of classes to work,
Yes.
memorizing lines. And I think this was before the junior division like transitioned away from plays that had a lot of dialogue. Ones that were more musically based, I guess. This was still a musical, but it was a lot of dialogue, I remember. And I was completely overwhelmed, and apparently I did well enough that you guys didn't kick me out, and I fell in love. So
Didn't kick you out at second grade.
I didn't embarrass you too much. So
So tell me how you used what you learned at camp every day. I think that's one of you contacted me after you saw Jennifer's piece.
I did.
You were at a conference or something, and you were doing some kind of exercise or something.
Sure. So what I do now, I'm an assistant professor of anatomy and cell biology at the Indiana University School of Medicine. My day job is primarily teaching medical students how the human body works. And so I guess I make doctors, which I think is a pretty cool thing to say.
Yes.
But on the other side of my day job, I run a research lab. So I'm interested in bone and muscle mechanics. And what I mean by that is that I'm interested in how to make bone and muscle stronger and work better. And in particular, I'm interested in how the shape of those two structures, bone and muscle, can change during an individual's life and how that reflects how well they work. But I didn't used to say it like that. I used to say it in a lot more complicated, jargony language. And I realized that gets me nowhere. So I started digging around here at IU to find out what sorts of programs were available for me to become better at communicating what I do. And I realized that Indiana University was partnered up with the Alan Alda Center for Communicating Science at Stony Brook University.
Mm-hmm.
And what that is this incredible program that Alan Alda himself built, based on the theory of using applied improvisational theater approaches to teach people how to become better at communicating with an audience in real time. And so I learned that when I was at Camellot, I learned how to engage an audience. I learned how to make eye contact. I learned how to modify what I was doing in real time in response to the reaction I was getting from an audience. But more importantly, I learned how to play with the people on stage well. I learned how to make my scene partner look good. And I learned that if I make my scene partner look good, my scene partner in turn will make me look good. And the same is true whether your scene partner is someone on stage with you or that scene partner is an audience that you are playing to. And so I realized that, I had this background in improv that I had learned when I was at camp for many years. I mean, I went to camp from at least 8 years, and I taught there for a couple of years after that. In fact, I taught drama. One of my favorite things to do was to teach drama with Steve Courtney. Because of all the improv we could do with second graders, third graders, and all of the pantomime. That was really what really got it, really sort of, lit the spark for me, was watching children realize that they could say a whole lot without saying anything, and watching them come alive that way. And so I realized, if I could somehow harness what I had learned at Camellot and what I had learned as a scientist, to engage an audience, that I might become pretty good at what I do.
It's cool. Has that worked? I mean, do you see that your students are engaged with that, and then your fellow instructors that you've taught the improv communication, has that engaged people more, do you think?
I think so, yes. I think that everyone who's gone through our training recognizes the inherent value of becoming better at communicating what they do, and that it doesn't need to be done with so much jargon.
What is your favorite Camellot memory?
My favorite Camellot memory. I have two favorite Camellot memories. My first favorite Camellot memory was the award ceremony after Saturday night, after the senior division show.
Yeah.
Everyone is still in makeup, but not in costumes, and we're all piled onto the stage, and everyone, having a great time because we know this is the last time we're going to be hanging out with our friends for quite a while, even though we know there's a cast party coming up at some point, which will be off-site. But just that camaraderie after 6 weeks. I know that camp season is shortened down to 5, correct?
Right.
But after 5 weeks, after 6 weeks, having that camaraderie was always something that just impressed upon me quite a bit. My second favorite memory from camp was standing across the street from our hotel in London playing hacky sack with a bunch of people. Not in the mid-90s, and I think Steve Courtney was wearing his fanny pack.
Yes.
And so, that is a memory that's seared on my, it's seared on the back of my retina here. I'll never forget that. Yeah, I look back on my days at camp, and I look back at the group of campers that I hung around with the most, and everyone has such an interesting career, doing such interesting things. And there are a number of us. I don't know that I would include myself in here, although I guess because I teach improv, I still have my foot in this world a little bit. But there's several of us who went on to have careers in professional arts, and that's really cool to me. When my kids, are talking about, wanting to learn how to play instruments, that kind of stuff. Well, hey, I have friends who are in rock and roll bands, right? Or I have friends who are professional dancers, or I have, friends who are on Broadway, right? Those are opera singers, right? These are so amazing to me that there are so many people that came out of this small upstart camp.
Happily ever aftering than here in Camelot.